Hey guys, what's up and welcome back to my channel. As you guys can see from the title of today's video, we're gonna do another book video. I haven't done a book video in a while and I really miss them. So today I'm gonna be sharing with you guys all the books that I've read recently, including some of the books that I read back in 2021 that I haven't updated on my channel yet. Before we get into today's video, I do want to thank today's sponsor of the video, which is Book of the Month, of course. Thank you to Book of the Month for sponsoring today's video. You guys know I absolutely love Book of the Month. I've been working with them for so long now. Anyways, if you guys don't know how Book of the Month works, it is basically a monthly subscription box where you get to pick each month a book to read and they will send it to you. Book of the Month picks 5 books for the month. You get to pick any of the 5 books for that month to read, and first time users actually get their first book for $9.99 when you use the code LETSGO. So if you're interested in signing up for Book of the Month, keep in mind it only ships to US citizens, so I'm sorry to all of my international bookies. But let me share with you guys the picks that they have for this month. Is the Magnolia Palace. The second one is Black Cake. The next one is Reckless Girls, Fiona and Jane. And lastly, Love and Other Disasters. These are the main 5 picks for the month of January. However, Book of the Month was super kind enough to send me one of their add-ons for this month. This is not a main pick, but this is a add-on. The one that they sent me is The Maid. Anyways, if you guys are curious and signing up for Book of the Month, I'll leave all the information down in the description box below. And remember, for first-time buyers, you can get your first hardcover book for $9.99 when you use the code LETSGO. So if that's something you're interested in, click the link in the description box below and go get your first book of the month. The first book that I want to talk about is It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. I ended up giving this book a 4-star review. I gave it 5 stars at first, but I changed it the other day to 4 stars because I don't know if it's something I'd necessarily read again, because it wasn't something that I was like, oh my gosh, I need to read this again, but it was definitely a book that it was impactful. It was definitely important and it definitely impacted the way I thought. I actually really ended up liking It Ends With Us. I cried towards the end because of just all the pent-up emotion. One of the things I do want to point out about It Ends With Us is I definitely recommend searching up the trigger warnings, because it does talk about domestic violence and abuse and stuff like that. So if that is something that you're not too keen on reading, I wouldn't recommend it, but just be aware that that does have it in it. I think one of my favorite things about It Ends With Us is how Colleen Hoover so seamlessly was able to really put into perspective domestic violence situations, especially from seeing it as a young age and thinking, well, why didn't she just leave, kind of stuff like that. And then as you get older, you don't understand it until you get into a situation that that yourself, and it kind of enforces that you won't truly understand someone's thought process until you go through similarly what they've gone through, kind of thing. There were so many things that Ryle did that I was just like, oh my god, I want to reach through this freaking book and I want to punch you. Alright, next book that I read is actually one of my favorites of 2021 that I read. Punk 57 by Penelope Douglas. I gave this book a 5-star read. I read it like that. It was so good. It's definitely not for younger readers. It's definitely more mature. If anybody reads Penelope Douglas, you know what I mean. But it was just so good. Just the plot line was just amazing. The conflict, the tension. It was one of my favorite books of 2021. So I really liked that book, and I really liked the banter between the 2 characters. One thing to note about this book as well, I would definitely search up the trigger warnings for this one. I ended up giving it to my friend Kate, and I don't know where she is in it right now, but I left the tabs in that book, and I mean all the tabs in that book, including the spicy scenes, so my friend is about to literally see inside my mind. I don't know how I feel about that. The next book that I read is The Silent Patient by Alex. I don't even know how you say his last name, but I ended up giving that book a 3-star review. It wasn't one of those books where I was like, oh my god, whoa. I kind of saw the ending coming and I kind of saw the plot twist coming, but I really liked the way the author wrote the book and just everything leading up to it. It was also a pretty fast read as well, so it didn't feel like it was dragging on for super long at all. It's definitely one of those books to get you out of a reading slump, but I don't necessarily think I would read it again. And I would also 50-50 chance recommend it depending on who I'm talking to and what they're interested in. If you are interested in like psychological, like what the fuck did I just read books, that's definitely a book to read. I definitely like those kind of books, but that was more on like the predictable side of psychological fucked up, which I'll get later into. I have a better recommendation for psychological fucked up. But anyways, that one was a really good one. I wasn't too disappointed. I didn't really go into it with very high expectations, but I didn't go into it with like low expectations either. I've heard pretty good things about it. I ended up giving it a 3 stars. I pretty liked it. The next book that I read was The Midnight Library. This book, I had so many second thoughts of what I've done with my life while reading this book that I had to give it a 5-star like review, because it's just one of those books that I would read again, just because of what it makes me think of. If nobody's read The Midnight Library or knows what it's about, it's pretty much about this girl, Nora Seed, who, trigger warning, ends up killing herself, and she is stuck in this like in-between state of like alive but like dead but not dead, if that makes sense. And she's basically in this place called the Midnight Library, and a bunch of these books on the shelves have lives that she could have lived, like alternative lives had she done like one thing differently. So it's basically playing on like butterfly effect almost as well. They also have this thing in the book called Book of Regrets, and it's basically like this book that has like all the regrets you ever had in your life, and as you go through each book, like each alternative life, the regrets kind of go away because you kind of realize, oh wait, that's not really a regret. And it's just kind of one of those books that makes you, I guess, a little more appreciative of life. Just like life is so short and we have so many regrets, and the thing is like those, you can't go back and change time. One of like the main quotes in that book that I really liked, it was talking about how like a person is like a city, and how some side streets aren't that pleasant, but the side streets, those side streets like shouldn't put you off from the whole city as a whole. And I thought that was like really key to underline, and I ended up underlining that scene, and I just really liked it. So I really liked that book. I gave it 5 stars, and I would definitely read it again. I definitely recommend it. The next book that I read was The Alchemist. I ended up giving this one a 5-star at first, but then I ended up giving it 4 stars. I don't necessarily know if I would read it again, but I did end up really liking The Alchemist. I just liked the message that it had. Like, we each have our own destiny and like mission, and sometimes it'll take longer than others' missions. It was a really fast read too. Definitely a book to get you out of the reading slump, and I listened to the audiobook as I read it, so I got through it like that, and I really liked it. So the next book that I read The Chase, which is the first book in the Briar U series, which is the off-campus spin-off series. I really liked it. I wouldn't read it again just because the characters weren't really characters that I could physically and emotionally connect with. In The Chase, you have Dean Laurentis's younger sister Summer, and then you are also following along Fitz, so you're following along their love story, and their love story is like very cute, but I think because they're such polar opposites, I like couldn't relate to either of them. Yeah, I ended up giving that one 3 stars, depending on who I recommend it to. Some people might like it, some people might not. The next book that I read is The Risk by Elle Kennedy. This is the second book in the Briar U spin-off series. This one, I ended up giving this book a 5-star read because I absolutely loved the characters in this book. The characters in this book are Brianna and Jake Connolly. Brianna is the Briar U hockey coach's daughter, and Jake Connolly is the Harvard team's rival player, like the it player. It's like a you're not supposed to be together type thing, but they end up developing a fake relationship. And I thought the whole plot line to this one was so good. I would definitely categorize this as the guy falling first, because he like basically begs her to go on a date with him. One of my favorite quotes from this book is on page 380, and this is when she is saying I love you to Jake. And I'm not gonna spoil too much about this book, and I don't think this is really much of a spoiler. We kind of know they end up together. Like, you go into these books knowing they're gonna end up together, but I really liked this quote. It goes, "The last boy I said those words to chose himself over me repeatedly and without a second's thought, but the man I'm saying them to now, I have faith that he'll always choose me, always choose us. I'm sorry, but if this is not like the perfect romance book, I don't know what is. Okay, the next book, again, one of my favorites of 2021, and one I would definitely read again, over and over and over again, and I will always recommend this book because it's so good. Verity by Colleen Hoover. Colleen Hoover has got me in a chokehold at the moment. I'm reading Ugly Love at the moment, and good God, does she have me in a chokehold. Like, my feelings are just destroyed. There's none left. I gave this one a 5-star read. If anybody who has read this, what is there to say about this book without spoiling it? This book is insane. Everything that I went into this book thinking, like, okay, let me restart. I went into this book thinking I knew what I was getting myself into. Any expectations that you have for this book probably are just going to multiply by 10, because I knew this was going to be a good book. For fuck's sake, it's by Colleen Hoover. I knew it was going to be a good book, but I was not prepared for all the twists and turns of this book. This is definitely a book I'd read again. For those who have read it, I'm team manuscript, and I'm not going to spoil anything, but Miss Girl's just too crazy for it to not be true. I'm team manuscript. There's no way. The next book that I read is called Somebody's Daughter. It's a memoir by Ashley C. Ford. I got this from Book of the Month. It's like a really, really short read. Initially chose this book as a palate cleanser after Verity because of how psychologically fucked up Verity was. And I was like, you know what? I need a palate cleanser. Like, my brain, it's screwed. There's screws loose in my brain. So I decided I'd read this one. It's not a palate cleanser at all. It's definitely a book that you need to search up the trigger warnings for. It talks about sexual assault, rape, and abuse and stuff like that. Domestic abuse as well. So I would definitely search up the trigger warnings for that book. But it's a really, really interesting book. I ended up giving it a 4-star read. I would have given it a 5-star read had I feel like there were just some aspects of this book that could have been dived into a little more. But overall, it was like a pretty good book. I had such trouble deciding between, wow, this book is amazing, and oh my god, like, I was not prepared for this. Like, wow. The last book that I'm going to talk about is called The Killer Across the Table. This one fucked me up. I ended up giving this book a 5-star read. When I say this book fucked me up, I mean the content in this book is super heavy. Given the name, The Killer Across the Table, they're talking about the psyche of 4 different serial killers throughout this book, and it doesn't just stop at those 4 serial killers. It kind of relates those serial killers' psyches to people like Ted Bundy, Ed Kemper, stuff like that. This is divided basically into 4 sections. So each killer kind of has their own section, and they're pretty like decently small sections, but the content within those sections is so heavy because, hi, we're talking about serial killers, people who kill people and did horrific things to others. It's not light content, and I definitely recommend looking up the trigger warnings for this. This one took me a while to get through only because the content was so heavy, and I feel like every time I went to go read it, I was like, oh my god, what is wrong with these people? Like, my brain could not wrap around how these killers had like no empathy. Like, obviously they don't have empathy if they're going out killing people, but like, my god, like, there's none. Anyways, I thought it was really interesting. I do have Mindhunter as well, but I read this one first and I really liked it. I definitely recommend to be cautious about this one, and if you do read this, read it in sessions. Anyways, those are all the books that I have read recently, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please be sure to give it a thumbs up and comment down below what your most recent read was and what you rated it. And like I said earlier, if you guys are interested in signing up for Book of the Month, be sure to click that link in the description box below and get your first book for $9.99 when you use the code LETSGO. But yeah, other than that, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys all in my next one. Bye guys. I used to take myself out on dates, open my own damn doors, pay for everything on my plate. Sometimes I'd even get the steak, cause I got it like that. Always had my own bag, never needed no man to rely on. Got 2 good shoulders to cry on.